What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Wolf King Brewing channel. Today I'm here to show off my raspberry vanilla stout that I called Inverse Effects. Now, if you remember / if you were around, my very first video on this channel was a 10-day brews video, the very first episode, in which I brewed this particular beer. I apologize in retrospect because that video was 30 minutes long, and it's just the brew day, you know, it doesn't include the finished beer. So here we are with the finished beer. I'm showing you guys the final product. I'm very, very happy with how this beer came out. If you missed the brew day, go ahead and check it out. You can see the ingredients that I used. I will showcase the recipe down in the description below if you're curious. One thing I did mention in that first episode was that I did use a Voskviak yeast to ferment this beer. Now, the version that I use is one that I use all the time, which is the dry packet of Voskviak from Lalamand. And Lalamand? I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but either way, I'll put a picture of it up on the screen so you know what I'm talking about. That stuff rips through wort incredibly quickly, and for beers like this that already have fruit additions, I never have to worry about any fruity ester production. It ripped through this wort incredibly quickly. If you guys remember, I started at an original gravity of 1074, which was actually way higher than I was planning on. Now, that being said, even though this beer started out quite a bit higher than I expected in terms of gravity, it was still terminal in 48 hours. Believe me when I tell you, this thing was down from 1074 to 1022 in 2 days. This yeast is no joke. Sometimes I fear that it's going to make its way out of the fermenter and eat my entire house with me inside of it. But anyways, I'm not really surprised anymore. This stuff is an absolute powerhouse. And here's the best part, right? This beer finished a little higher than I expected as well. You might say 1022. This is not a sweet stout. There's no lactose. That's pretty high for this beer to be finishing. That being said, that's about 70% attenuation, which is a little lower than I normally get from this yeast, but I mean, come on, I can't be surprised. This beer started out way higher than I expected. It was done in 2 days. You know, I didn't make a yeast starter. I just pitched one packet of dry yeast, not rehydrated or anything, straight into the fermenter. I didn't do any proper oxygenation. I just shook it around for a couple minutes and said, here we go. That being said, when I did notice no more airlock activity on the second day and it was still reading 1022, I did go ahead and add some yeast nutrient. I shook it around to rouse the yeast a little bit just to make sure it was finished. And it was. I let it sit for another 3 days, and the beer sat right at 1022. I took a sample and it tasted wonderful. So I went ahead and racked it into my keg, and at that point I added my flavorings. Now, my flavoring additions were incredibly simple this time around. I just used a vanilla extract, a Mexican vanilla extract that I got on Amazon. It was an 8-ounce bottle. I'll link it in the description below because it was an exceptional deal. Loud ass. And in lieu of using any real raspberries in this recipe, which is a pain in the butt, I really did not want to use any kind of real fruit. I didn't even want to deal with fruit puree, to be honest. I used this Brewer's Best Natural Flavoring. Now, this comes in all kinds of flavors, and I like this stuff. The flavors are hit and miss. Some of them are not amazing. This raspberry one I really like. I've used it for a cider and 2 beers now, including this one, and I've had nothing but great experiences with it. It does give you slightly more of a candied raspberry kind of flavor. It's not a super fresh raspberry flavor, but in something like a stout that's pretty sweet and there's some chocolate and some vanilla going on, it all ties together to make like basically a chocolate raspberry milkshake kind of deal, and it's wonderful. In terms of the amounts, I went ahead and used 3 ounces of vanilla extract and 2 ounces of this raspberry flavoring. That being said, the vanilla still comes through just enough in my opinion. I did do these 1 ounce at a time and tasted it each time just to make sure I got the proper balance. What more can I say? I mean, there's no dry hopping here because it's a stout. You know, I talked a little bit about the HBC 472 hops that I used in this beer that are supposed to give you some barrel-aged characteristics, obviously sans barrel aging. And I do get a little bit of oak, you know, very little. It's an undertone certainly, and it's barely noticeable because the raspberry and vanilla are so in your face. But to be honest, that's kind of how I wanted it. And I'm super happy with the way that this came out. I think it's really well balanced, and while the raspberry and vanilla are kind of in your face, they're very forward. That's kind of what I wanted, you know, and the fact that this almost simulates, like I said, like a raspberry chocolate vanilla milkshake, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful beer to drink. I wouldn't drink more than a few, certainly. It is a little bit heavier, but such is the case with stouts. That's about it. That's all I have to say about this beer. This video is going to be much shorter than the first part. Please, guys, let me know what you think about the way I'm formatting these episodes. In other words, I did this one in 2 parts. You know, this is episode 1 of 10 Day Brews, part 2. And the first one was the brew day, and here we are kind of with the finished product. Let me know if you like this, or if you'd rather I do it just kind of as an all-in-one shot type deal with a little bit longer of a video. Please give me any kind of feedback. I will again drop the recipe in the description if you guys want to brew something similar to this. Feel free. It's a wonderful beer. I'm super stoked with the way it came out. Now, I will touch on one more thing before ending this video. You may have noticed that this video is being put up far after the 10-day mark, since when the first video was put up. I had a little bit of a hold up in my system where my canning machine, you see back here, I have the Cannular Pro semi-auto canning machine, or can seamer, I should say. I had the manual unit before, and it just stopped working. So I had this batch, I had another batch sitting in the keg, and I really only have one 5-gallon keg. It's right here, just for proof, in case you don't believe me. I essentially use it as a bottling bucket. I only use it to burst carbonate the beers and then transfer from the keg into cans or bottles. I really don't store beer in kegs. I have a couple mini kegs that I use for that. But so that kind of traffic jammed my entire system, and this beer ended up having to sit for way longer than I intended. But I mean, honestly, it was just maturing. I had it cold. The whole fermenter was just stuck in the fridge behind me, and it was only getting better. But I do promise you, this beer was done, completely finished, ready to drink in exactly 6 days after brewing it. It was completely ready to go. So this is my 6-day raspberry vanilla stout. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I will see you guys in the next one.